You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby. Thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Little Money Monday action with our own Lindsay Crosby of Locked On MLB Prospects. How are you, my friend?
Hey, I'm doing great. Had a great weekend in Auburn, so excited to talk about it today.
Yeah, crazy weekend. And obviously it was highlighted by Auburn basketball positioning themselves, Lindsay, to be the number one team in all of college basketball once the polls come out later today. And a lot of you listening, it'll already be up. But it seems like even, the naysayers, the folks like Jesse Newell, who were holding Auburn back from that number one ranking, they all kind of have nodded and said on Twitter, is like, all right, I think it's time. I think it's time for Auburn basketball to pass Gonzaga and be the number one team in the country. 80-71. And Lindsay, Auburn, it was an incredible environment, a lot of energy. But that first half, I almost think they got a little too up for the game. And I think at halftime, they kind of caught their breath. And then what they did in the second half against a very, very good Kentucky WIldcats basketball team was incredible. Outscoring them 51-38 and really made it where we all could relax for the last 4 or 5 minutes of the contest. It was an incredible performance by these guys.
I honestly did not expect to be able to just kind of sit back and soak in that we were going to win the game, especially after that first little bit, like you said. But the fight that Auburn had and really the complete game that Auburn had. So, like, if you go and you look at Kentucky's performance, a lot of stuff, Oscar Tshiebwe, we know he's like one of the most dominant players in basketball, and he had 14 rebounds, but the other 9 players that played for Kentucky only had 8. He had 14 of their 26. And then you go back and you look at Auburn, and Auburn got contributions from everybody. And were there moments where Walker Kessler was unstoppable, down low? I don't know.
Yes.
For some reason, they couldn't play the pick and roll. They couldn't switch off and, cover Walker Kessler. Jabari Smith hitting key shots at key moments. Didn't have an amazing game on the stat sheet, but definitely came in and did the things he needed to do. And so, Jalen Williams off the bench with 7 points, just a complete overall team effort. We saw which team had more depth. We saw which team was more complete top to bottom. And Auburn not only won, they covered, because good teams win.
Great teams cover, courtesy of our friends at betonline.ag. Yeah, you're totally right. And I'm glad you mentioned Jalen Williams. To me, there were 2 unsung heroes in all of this. And if you listen to our broadcast for after the game basketball on ESPN 106.7, I put it in the audio version of the Locked On Auburn podcast feed as well. But 2 unsung heroes for Auburn in my mind. You mentioned Jalen Williams. Those 7 points came in just 10 minutes. He made both of his shots, and he got to the free throw line for a bout of 3 because they fouled him as he was shooting from deep there, which I'm a little surprised they called it, if I'm being honest with you. But across 10 minutes, scored 7 points. It was very effective on the defensive side of the court. I'm honestly surprised they didn't play him more than that. I think we need to see more Jalen Williams in situations like that, because in the first half, the other unsung hero in my mind, Zep Jasper. Zep was the only guy I really trusted with the basketball as far as bringing the basketball down the floor, because Kentucky was using their athleticism and length and size, and Auburn was turning it over a ton. There was 3 straight possessions where they turned it over. And Dylan Cardwell, he turned into Austin Wiley out there as far as, not being able to catch the basketball. But I think, he's an emotional player. I think he was just so jacked up, and he offered a lot on the defensive side of the floor. But man, Zep was incredible to me. And you look at Zep and Jalen Williams, they're the older guys on the team in the locker room. They're the leaders of this group as far as age is concerned. And both of those guys stepped up when you needed them most. Zep's line was not impressive. He shot it once. He made 1 field goal attempt. So he was 1 for 1 for 2 points. He didn't get to the free throw line. But, just 3 assists. He had 1 rebound. But he played 17 minutes, Lindsay, and he had a plus-minus of plus 17. That was best in the entire contest. He played 17 minutes, plus 17. Auburn clearly a better team when he is on the floor.
Yeah, and shout out to friend of the pod, Justin Ferguson with the Auburn Observer. He had a great newsletter come out, I think it was Sunday morning, recapping the game, and he mentioned that in there. He talked about Cambridge was +9 in 12 minutes. Williams was +5 in 10 minutes. And it was something where even when we didn't have the key guys on the floor, like we didn't have Jabari Smith on the floor, we had a lineup in the second half without Jabari Smith and without KD Johnson, and we still were +5. And
Unreal.
So it's just
real.
I mean, if you told me, yeah, you can take Jabari Smith out, take KD Johnson out, who arguably are 2 of the 3 best scorers on the team on a consistent basis, and we're still going to score more points than the Kentucky Wildcats, it's wild. And I saw a lot of stuff on Twitter. I was a bit disappointed. I was really looking forward to seeing some of the conversation after the game, and a lot of Kentucky fans had a lot of they were in their feelings about like, oh, well, when we don't have Ty Washington and
I believe the term you're looking for is they were big mad.
They were big mad. I did not listen. I cooked so much food this weekend. I did not have to salt a single thing I cooked because there was so much around from Kentucky fans.
But it is important to note for people listening that are unfamiliar with our back and forth on the morning show that we used to do together. You have 9 different types of salts.
I have a lot of salt. Yes. Did not need to use any of them because I had so much salt from Kentucky.
Right.
But they were saying that, Ty being out of the game early, and then they had, I believe they actually had I think they're called little people, but they had a short person playing for them as well who left twice. And it was something where like they said, oh, if we have those guys back, we are at full strength and we win this game. And I'm like, that's not how it works. You are a complete team or you're not a complete team. And what you're telling me is Kentucky is not a complete team. Auburn is. Because even when Auburn takes out Jabari Smith, takes out KD Johnson, they still win the rotation. They still win. Why can't I think of his name?
Who?
He's like the point guard for Kentucky. It's like 5'9", like the little guy. Walker Kessler. Yes, Wheeler. Walker Kessler did him wrong by apparently trying to play basketball in front of him like twice.
Yeah, I said this quote and a few people tweeted at me. But I said this for after the game. I said that screen was the largest screen I've seen since I stepped foot in an IMAX a few years ago. I mean, what Kessler did to that dude was totally legal, but there was no controversy about it whatsoever. It's just like, man, you've got to have your head up. You have to have your head up if you're going to be playing that aggressive.
Walker Kessler is just like 1.5 feet taller than he is. And I'm not joking when I say Walker Kessler is almost 1.5 feet taller than him. He's like 5'9". So he comes up to Walker Kessler's elbow. Walker Kessler did everything legal that should not have been a penalty. The fact that one of those was reviewed for a flagrant drove me nuts. Yeah. Because legal plays, it's just when you have a player that is so large like Walker Kessler and physically, is imposing his will physically, it looks like he's doing something wrong. And in that case, he was not. He just was playing basketball. And Kentucky should find taller players.
Yeah, sure. I think that's totally fine. But from an Auburn perspective, I think we can all agree we don't need to nitpick the officiating. I think it was fine. I think it was totally okay. What was the free throw? It was Kentucky shot 10 free throws. Auburn shot 29.
Yeah.
So, and how about Auburn finally hitting some free throws? 24 of 29, good for over 82% from the charity stripe. That's
85.7. Yeah.
That's been a big weakness of this basketball team. And as your mother likes to say, free is in the name. You should make them because free is literally in the name.
They're literally free. My mother-in-law makes this point every time we watch basketball together. She says they're free. You should make them all.
Right.
So 85%, we'll take it.
Yeah. So Auburn takes on a Missouri team that I don't think is very good. They've got some decent wins, but this should be not as bad as Auburn versus Georgia. And you have the travel element in all of this as well, but Auburn should be fine against Missouri this week. The games that I have circled left on the schedule for the Tigers, Lindsay, are going to Gainesville. I'm not too concerned about Oklahoma this Saturday, and then hosting Alabama because they're going to want to put everything into that one. So those are the two big ones for me that I'm like, okay, because when you play Arkansas it's which Arkansas team are you going to get? I mean, if you get the Arkansas team that's clicking, then yeah, obviously that's a concern. But I just think with the way this conference is, you can bet on every team to be inconsistent with the exception of Kentucky and Auburn, and Auburn's got Kentucky done. And the fact that that Auburn is now a 2-point or they're 2-game ahead in the standings for the conference, it's like, goodness gracious, it's incredible how good of a situation we're in today.
I don't think they're a great team, but I do worry a little bit about going to Tennessee.
Sure.
Simply because of the history Bruce Pearl has there, and they do get up for that game a lot more than other games on their schedule. So
but
that's
Bruce,
probably the third one.
Bruce, let's be honest here. Bruce owns Tennessee. Like, he's the mayor of Knoxville at this point.
He actually, so funny story, Bruce's car, I had a chance to see Bruce out. His wife owns the Grove Bark Inn over there.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
By Morris Mill. And so I saw him getting out of his car one time, and the registration, everything for the car is actually paid for by the city of Knoxville, because it's one of the rights that he gets as a public official, as the mayor of Knoxville, as he receives a complimentary vehicle.
I was wondering where the joke was going. Got it.
Yeah, that was. I thought that was cool that they took care of their mayor like that, even though he's not always there.
You get there, yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, even when Auburn had like its worst season in the last several years last year, like, they still found a way to beat Tennessee. So, whatever. You know what I'm saying. All right. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Get Upside. Get Upside is an incredible app, which anyone out there that buys gas, they need to know about Get Upside. Folks using this app are getting up to 25 cents per gallon of gas time they fill up. Just download the free Get Upside app in your phone's app store and use promo code SCORE, and you will get a bonus 25 cents per gallon on your first fill up. That is 50 cents cash back. Are you kidding me? So once again, use promo code SCORE when you download the app. A lot of folks in Locked On Auburn Discord are using it. I'm using it, saving money every time I fill up. So download the free Get Upside app and use promo code SCORE. Lindsay, Crosby, let's turn our focus now on what's going on with Auburn football, because I think it's incredibly interesting. So it's official that Auburn and Derek Mason are no longer there. At the time of us recording, it is not official where Derek Mason will be. It certainly seems like it will be Oklahoma State, but there has not been an official announcement, to my knowledge, that has happened yet. But Auburn over the weekend put out an email and a press release. Auburn football announces defensive staff changes, so everything there is finalized. The verbiage that they use is Derek Mason is stepping down from his position as defensive coordinator. So Jeff Schmedding gets promoted from linebackers coach to defensive coordinator. Cornerbacks coach Zach Etheridge will take over coaching Auburn's secondary and serve as recruiting coordinator. Bert Watts, your favorite, will continue coaching special teams and coach edge linebackers while adding the title of associate head coach. And then Jimmy Brumbaugh has taken over, the former Auburn SEC defensive lineman, all SEC defensive lineman. He's been hired as a defensive line coach. And then Auburn went out and got Christian Robinson, who was a linebackers coach for the last several years at Florida. So kind of getting some more SEC names in this while losing probably the biggest SEC name with Derek Mason. But Auburn fans are kind of all over the place on this one. I don't think this is a good thing.
Yeah. So you bring in a coach, and you bring in a coach from outside the SEC who, except for 1 year at Arkansas State, has pretty much exclusively been at Boise. Mm-hmm. You bring him in, and some of his I'm going to call them lower level coaches come in, Jeff Schmedding, Brad Bedell. He brings on Eric Kiesel as an analyst. And so the concern among the fan base is these guys don't have a lot of experience with the SEC. So you turn around and you hire two coordinators, Mike Bobo and Derek Mason, with extensive history in the SEC, as well as you ensure that some of the other low-level staffer spots are filled by SEC veterans, Zach Etheridge, Cadillac, Cornelius Williams, Will Friend, things like that. Well, as of now, Bobo is gone, Mason is gone. Cornelius Williams, famously 4 weeks into the season, was gone.
Wow.
You still have Cadillac. Hopefully he doesn't go anywhere for a long time. You have Zach Etheridge. I believe as of now, we still have Will Friend. I think some people have a question whether or not he's going to go somewhere else because he was close with Mike Bobo. But as of now, you have Will Friend.
Please go somewhere else.
And then you have...
I'm not supposed to say that. My bad.
Yeah. Now it's just one of those. Okay. So side note, people said Will Friend is a good coach because at Tennessee, he recruited good players, the good offensive linemen. Those offensive linemen never got any better at Tennessee. I feel like he recruited 5 stars and then they never hit their potential. But at Auburn, he also has not recruited the 5 stars. So if you're not doing the recruiting and you're not doing the development, what exactly would you say it is your job is here?
Yeah, what are you doing? What are you doing? Right.
Why are you here? Yeah. But anyway, so now we have Schmetti and Keesall and Bedell, and they all have a year in the SEC now. So I think there's a way to look at this and say, if our only concern, we're comfortable with the scheme, fundamentally, the scheme that we're trying to run, and we just wanted guys who are familiar with the conference to help in recruiting, you could spin this and say that, well, that big weakness of your staff has been mitigated. I think that's a little bit of trying to paint a rosy picture of it. This is not a great look to lose both coordinators within 1 year, or I guess in Mason's case, 13 months of your hire, when your job is to rebuild this program back to contending for the SEC. And by the way, across the way is Alabama, who we can all agree is the greatest modern football dynasty. And so this is not a good look, and this is awkward. And I think that fundamentally this changes nothing about 2022 because Harsin still has to win. This doesn't make it any easier to win. This makes it harder to win, I'd say, without
I don't think the fan base would have been happy with 6-6, but if you go 6-6, you're done with the way this all looks, especially if the defense is not as good. Now it should be with the amount of guys coming back, but you just look at the success as far as retaining players on the defensive side of the ball. And then, on the offensive side of things, it just seems like things are getting worse. And so were all the defensive guys coming back? Are they enamored with Harsin or with Derek Mason, or do they just like being at Auburn? I mean, there's a million different factors that go into that decision. Or are they like, okay, if I have another season, maybe I get drafted two rounds earlier and make, X amount of dollars more. There's a million factors to go into this. But you got to think who you're playing for and who your coordinator is and who your position coach is are some of the factors that are kind of listed closer to the top. So that's an interesting dynamic of it all. But also, Lindsay, just hearing from folks and talking to folks kind of close to the situation, to me, reading between the lines here, and this is all just kind of me piecing together things, nuggets that I've been given. But it sounds like Derek Mason was the coach that really understood the importance of NIL more than any other coach there. With, guys coming up to him at the end of the season thinking about leaving and, because, possibly they can make more money somewhere else. And then realizing that, they weren't being taken care of at Auburn, and then making sure that player gets taken care of. And then a few days later, they tweet out that they're staying. And then just kind of, it sounds like conversations happen within the coaching staff of why was everyone not taken care of? This is important. NIL is important. And then 2 weeks later, smoke is emerging that he's leaving. And so that is the biggest issue to me. I hope it's all exaggeration. But if Harsin does not understand the importance of NIL, this is going to be very bad. Not just for 2022, but for the recruiting classes and player retention and everything that goes along with that. They've got to figure out NIL. The implementation and the formation of NIL Auburn is huge. I think it's a great idea where fans can get involved with helping Auburn become, one of the most competitive athletic departments in the country. And I think they've nailed it with basketball. Based on my understanding, I think they are knocking it out of the park with basketball. I think they're knocking it out of the park with Auburn baseball. And so, you just need one more step there. You need one more step, and that ultimately starts at the top. But they've got to get this figured out. They've got to get it figured out quickly. And I believe that he can do that because Harson's obsessed with winning. He's obsessed with it. And so he's going to figure it out at some point. I just hope it's like last week. You know what I mean?
Yeah. If you are, whenever I see a tweet or a column or an article talking about a coach complaining about NIL or complaining about the portal or complaining about the ways that modern college football works, I kind of mentally write that coach off as they're not going to work out, because you have to 100% fully embrace and dive into all of these things: the transfer portal, NIL, re-recruiting your players because they get a free transfer, the extra COVID year, getting guys that you need to come back, getting them to come back, and other guys who you don't necessarily need, letting them go and not use that COVID year. And the reports that I've heard, like you said, I'm worried that they are not embracing NIL to the level that they need to. There is time to fix it. Sometimes all you need is some sort of, and this is not the right way to frame this, but sometimes all you need to realize that you need to change something is to have something catastrophic happen. And losing one of your higher level coaches because you did not adapt quick enough, it would meet the definition of a catastrophic thing to happen that could make you reevaluate and change. Maybe this is the wake-up call he needs. Maybe this is what Brian Harsin needs to say, okay, I need to fully lean into NIL and understand that this is how I'm going to win football games, and I'm not going to win games without it.
Right.
Hope so.
Lindsay Crosby, our guest today. Today's show brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the best place on the internet to place your sports wagers, whether it was playoff action this past weekend or, of course, college basketball happening virtually every night. BetOnline.ag is the best place to dive in. When you make your free account at BetOnline.ag and you make that first deposit, use promo code LOCKEDON to receive your 50% welcome bonus on that first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. It's also the new year. The new year means New Year's resolutions. And if yours is about getting fit and healthy in 2022, Built Bar needs to be a part of your daily routine. It is the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar. Heck, maybe even better than a candy bar. Most Built Bars contain just 130 calories with just 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of carbs, but 17 grams of protein. Compare that to a candy bar. It's not even close. And also, it probably tastes better than a candy bar. So go to Built.com, check out all the different flavors that they have. They're constantly rotating in and out new limited time flavors at Built.com. Use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. All right, Lindsay, we got a few minutes left, but what do you think about, I must ask you a question. What do you think about the angle in regards to Derek Mason leaving and his confidence level that, okay, if he goes and joins Gundy at Oklahoma State, he's more likely to remain the head coach for the next several years than Harsin at Auburn?
See, to me, it feels like if you go to Oklahoma State over Auburn, all things being equal, there's a possibility that Oklahoma State opens up before Auburn does. And that, if you would ask me that middle of last season, that's what I would, because I would have thought, okay, Gundy's a little bit older. You know, Harsin's a younger guy. Harsin would be there longer. And then now you ask me that now, because when this stuff first started coming out with Oklahoma State, I'm thinking, okay, well, Gundy's been there a long time. I mean, he told us he was 40, 20 years ago? Right. I mean, and so I could see you come in there, you are the de facto coach in waiting. And then now that you mention it, I wonder if that's a way of Mason showing that he doesn't think Harsin's going to work out.
That's kind of the biggest talk that I've heard. And, you know, I don't think it's a big deal in regards to, you know, I think Schmedding's going to be good. I really do. I think Schmedding's going to be fine. But that chatter gets around, and it all goes back to recruiting, Lindsay. You know, if recruits hear that, and other coaches in the conference that Auburn's recruiting against are talking about that to the players, that messaging matters. And so for these kids, there's a big chunk of these kids that want to commit before their senior year starts. And obviously, you know, we've talked about it forever, but this 2023 class in the state of Alabama is crazy. It's ridiculous. 5 stars all over the place, 4 stars, like every 7A school is just loaded with them. But the the folks that want to commit before their senior season starts, that's a big deal because they haven't seen what Schmedding really brings to the table yet. And so I don't know how you combat that if you're Harsin or Auburn as a whole. I don't really know how you go up against that, but I think to me, that's the biggest concern in all of this.
The only thing I think you could do when it came to something like that would be, now that we're in the football off season and they're doing the tours around all the different Auburn groups, is to let athletic director Alan Green have let him be heard expressing a vote of confidence, doing one of those, we understand he's got, this is not a 1-year fix to be 10-2 and competing for the, for the conference. This is a 2 or a 3-year, some sort of quote like that.
Yeah, we believe in the process that Coach Harsin has in place.
Exactly. Something like that. I must ask you this, though.
You can use that if you want.
Yes, feel free to use that,
Yep.
Alan Green. It won't cost you anything except maybe a spare basketball ticket. I must ask you this. Do you think that Auburn's new president, being as committed to athletics as he is, do you think that that's good or bad for Bryan Harsin, given this new situation that we're in of he needs to have a good 2022?
Well, anytime you get a new boss, you get nervous, right? Because they want their people in there. But does that impact Harsin more? Or does that impact Alan Green more? I mean, we've already heard, the rumblings that, he's like gets second or third and several different AD jobs throughout the country. So it's like, what is his level of commitment? Is the new president going to love that? So does it impact people? Absolutely. I think it does. Is it a bad thing that happens? I don't think so. I think he's going to ask for loyalty and, demand it, a two-way street, which I think, anytime you fire your coach or your AD, and I'm not saying that either of these things are going to happen because I don't think they are, but anytime that happens, anytime you have to replace someone, very rarely do you take a step forward instantly. Like the whole 2013 thing where you fire Chizik and you hire Gus and you go to a natty, like that is craziness. Like that doesn't happen in the real world. And so I think that's why Gus was able to have like the success that he did, despite running things the way that he did, was because he didn't have to start over. Auburn got to kind of keep the good things going for 8 seasons. So to me, the new president's going to be like, if you're going to be the president of Auburn, you're intelligent for the most part.
Stephen Leaf.
Just please don't do contracts like Stephen Leaf did. That just please don't do that. Please don't do that. But yes, I do think it's going to matter. Don't you?
I do. I think that him being an Auburn guy, him being an internal hire, I think that gives a little bit more leeway to Bryan Harsin and to Alan Green because he knew what things were like before both of those guys were here. And I think you made a great point. I want to just kind of reemphasize this to people. 2013 Auburn was not typical of what a transition into a new coach looks like. Nick Saban lost to ULM. Like, that is more emblematic of what a coaching transition is. And I think that Auburn people sometimes, I heard a lot of people say that before the season, they saw worst case was 8-4 for 2021. And I'm like, I don't think you guys understand what worst case means. I mean, this was 6-7, and this wasn't the worst case. This was, it could have been even worse. Like I think
very well could have lost in Baton Rouge.
Yes, you very well could have lost in Baton Rouge. You very well could not have come back against Georgia State. It could have been worse. And so
this could have been healthy.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of things could have changed. And so I think this upcoming season is important for Harsin. And I think that as much as we like to talk about when you're building a program, wins and losses don't matter. It's how you win and lose. I do think the perception, if you have another losing record, is going to be bad. I think that
because Alan Green went on the War Report and talked about this, and they asked him point blank, like, what went into the decision to raise all that money to fire Gus? And he talked about hope. There was no hope around the program. And I just, once again, our friends, Justin Ferguson at the Auburn Observer, that he loves to talk about, like, there's got to be proof of concept. And if there's no proof of concept in 2022, then I think you do have to move on.
Yeah. And so it needs to look like you need to see the signs. And normally I would say that's all we have to look for in 2022. But I know the public perception, and I know that we just finished. If you go, instead of going 6-7, if you go 7-6, or if you go 8-5, I think you can have a season in 22 where it's just, does it look, is proof of concept there? Cool. Let's go on to 22 to 23.
Yeah. And you get your first 5 games at home next year. And I think your iffy games are at home. Like, you're not going to beat Georgia or Bama next year anyway. I don't think, based on the current state of things, unless you play out of your mind like you did in the Iron Bowl. But I think a lot of the toss-up games are in Jordan Hare. So you can totally this could totally be an 8-14 in 2022 if it all comes together. And like I said, I like the Jeff Schmedding thing. I think Austin Davis makes a ton of sense. The more you look into and talk about that guy, it's like, okay, yeah, cool. This could be a home run type of move. But still, you got to recruit. But if he goes 8-4, or maybe he goes 9-3, wouldn't that be awesome? You got to think some recruits come with that. And if Auburn figures out the quarterback situation, whether it's Calzada or Finley, whoever it is, and they're able to build a team around them and an offense around them and scheme guys open, I think it could be fun. I really, really do. So, I want to end this on a positive note, just because we've been talking negative about the football program, but I think things will be okay. It's just, this is a big season. This is a big season, not only for Brian Harsin, not only for Alan Green, not only for the new university president, but, moving forward, this is a big deal for the program.
Yeah, you didn't bring in the Caleb Williams and the 3 starting offensive linemen and the wide receiver you wanted. But what you did before spring semester is you gave yourself options at quarterback. Yep. You brought back enough offensive linemen who could have left, who did not have to come back. You brought enough of them back to give yourself options on the offensive line. I believe you have 7 guys now with starting experience on the offensive line. You did everything you could on offense. Defense, you got, some of the big names, Wooden, some of the big names to come back. Yeah. You gave, Owen Pappo, you gave yourself options on defense. And so you absolutely have, if you do everything correctly, you have the components here to make a run in 22. The only question is, do you do it?
Lindsay, how can people find you, hear you, support you, all that good stuff?
You can subscribe to Locked On MLB Prospects wherever you get your podcasts, and on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Crosby Baseball, and check out the merch at aushirts.com.
Yes, everything school shirts are up at aushirts.com. Be sure to check that out. We'll be back tomorrow right here on Locked On Auburn.